Yananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jingabhutale Swayam Rupa Gada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Siguro Sijuta Parakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Raganathan Vidhanthang Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabhadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vanchakapachuvascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayet Nasta Presha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavad Sevaya Bhagavad Utama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. So today, Thursday, September 25th, 2025, and we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Purana, Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order. Chapter 29 talks between Narada and King Prachinabarhi. Today we're on text 81, and there's not many chapters that you can say that in the Bhagavatam. I believe this may be the only one. Prachina Barhi Rajarshi Raja Sarga Birukshane Adisha Putran Agamat Tapase Kapilashramam Prachina Barhi Rajarshi Raja Sarga Birukshane Adisha Putran Agamat Tapase Kapilashramam Prachina Barhi Rajarshi Raja Sarga Birukshane Adisha Putran Agamat Tapase Kapilashramam. Chant.
Prachina Barhi Rajarshi Raja Sarga Birukshane
Adisha Putran Agamat Tapase Kapilashramam. Prachina Barhi Rajarshi Raja Sarga Birukshane Adisha Putran Agamat Tapase Kapilashramam. Prachina Barhi Rajarshi Rajasarga Birokshane Adisha Putran Agamat Tapase Kapilashramam. These synonyms, please repeat. Prachina Barhi, King Prachina Barhi, Raja Rishi, the saintly king, Raja Sarga, the mass of citizens, Abhirakshane, to protect, Adisha, after ordering, Putran, his sons, Agamat, departed, Tapase, for undergoing austerities, Kapila Ashramam, to the holy place known as Kapila Ashrama. Translation by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. In the presence of his ministers, the saintly king, Prachina Barhi, left orders for his sons to protect the citizens. He then left home and went off to undergo austerities in a holy place known as Kapila Ashrama. Please repeat. In the presence of his ministers, the saintly king Prachina Barhi left orders for his sons to protect the citizens. He then left home and went off to undergo austerities in a holy place known as Kapila Ashrama. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The word praja, sarga, is very important in this verse. When the saintly king Prachina Barhi was induced by the great sage Narada to leave home and take to the devotional service of the Lord, his sons had not yet returned from their austerities in the water. However, he did not wait for their return, but simply left messages to the effect that his sons were to protect the mass of citizens. According to Vira Raghava Acharya, such protection means organizing the citizens into the specific divisions of the 4 varnas and 4 ashramas. It was the responsibility of the royal order to see that the citizens were following the regulative principles of the 4 varnas, namely Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra, and the ashramas, namely Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyasa. It is very difficult to rule citizens in a kingdom without organizing this Varnashram Dharma. Witness our modern democracies. To rule the mass of citizens in a state and keep them in a complete progressive order is not possible simply by passing laws every year in the legislative assembly. The Varnashram Dharma is essential in a good government. One class of men, the Brahmanas, must be intelligent and Brahmanically qualified. Another class must be trained in administrative work, Kshatriya. Another in mercantile business, Vaishya. And another simply in labor, Shudra. These 4 classes of men are already there according to nature, but it is the government's duty to see that all 4 of these classes follow the principles of their varnas methodically. This is called Abhirakshana, or protection. It is significant that when Maharaj Prachina Barhi was convinced of the goal of life through the instructions of Narada, he did not wait even a moment to see his sons return, but left immediately. There were many things to be done upon the return of his sons, but he simply left them a message. He knew what his prime duty was. He simply left instructions for his sons and went off for the purpose of spiritual advancement. This is the system of Vedic civilization. Sridhar Swami informs us that Kapila Ashrama is located at the confluence of the Ganges and the Bay of Bengal, a place now known now as Ganga Sagara. This place is still famous as a place of pilgrimage, and many millions of people gather there every year on the day of the Makara Sankranti and take bath. That's around January 15th, depending on how the lunar calendar and the solar calendar line up. Middle of January, it's cold, and they take bath. Kind of like Kumbh Mela, only Kumbh Mela's slightly later in the solar calendar. It is called Kapilashrama because Lord Kapila is living there to perform his austerities and penances. Even to this day, he's there. Lord Kapila propounded the Sankhya system of philosophy. A bit of nectar there. Back to the Sanskrit here. Prachina Barhi Rajarshi Praja Sarga Bhirakshane Adisha Putran Agamat Tapase Kapilashamam. In the presence of his ministers, the saintly king Prachina Barhi left orders for his sons to protect the citizens. He then left home and he went off to undergo austerities in the holy place known as Kapila Ashrama. Mukum karoti bachalam pangam lagayate giris jadkripa tamaham bande sigurum dinutarinum padamananda madhavam. Very interesting verse and purport, many salient points here, and interesting things we can explore. The most striking thing is that King Prachina Barhi, after hearing all these instructions from Narada Muni about detaching himself from family life and taking to the devotional service, he told Narada Muni that these other so-called acharyas I had were engaging me in fruitive activities. But what you're telling me is completely different. You're telling me the real facts, that how one should give up his attachment to fruitive activities and take to the devotional service of the Lord. So now, in conclusion, understanding all this, he's leaving immediately. And even though he has some important duties to perform, after all, he's the king, but his business is not finished, because upon leaving, when the king is ready to leave his position, he turns it over to his son, or his sons, as mentioned here. But the sons were not present. They were off performing austerities in the water. But the immediacy and the great need of taking to Krishna consciousness as fully as possible and leaving behind his attachment was significantly important. And he realized this, so then he left immediately without making all the arrangements that a king might ordinarily make for the transition, the smooth transition of power. And then he instructed his ministers, tell my sons to protect the citizens. So this is rather astonishing in contrast to modern culture, where the political leaders, they try to stay in office, Prabhupada says very deliberately, until the very fag end of life. Even when they're no longer capable or have the potency, or their intelligence is not clear, still they cannot give it up. Even where you have these old men running for president, age 80 years old, and criticizing the person they're running against because he was like 6 months or a year older. But clearly we see in such old men signs of not only dementia, but of gross incompetence and just sheer ego and lust for power, and so many other bad qualities, because they are not actual kshatriyas. At best, they're vaishyas, successful businessmen. And in some case, that so-called business success is simply a bluff, a lot of lies involved, fabrication of numbers, etc. We have seen this in contemporary society, and it is, in one sense, a laughable foolishness, but in other senses is greatly lamentable state of chaos in modern society. Because Prabhupada makes the point here, quoting Srila Vidaragava Acharya, that to protect the citizens means to engage everyone in their particular varnashram dharma, whether they be a brahmana, a kshatriya, a vaishya, or shudra. But practically now there's no brahmins and kshatriyas, truthfully, and neither are there's such training for those types. I mean, there's those who pass in those positions, but they're not really trained in the proper system of varnashram. And then you have a bunch of vaishyas and a bunch of more shudras, and they're all running around with no direction or no proper management from the kshatriyas, and there's no kshatriyas to receive direction from bona fide brahmanas. Neither are there any bona fide brahmanas to give such direction. So everything is very chaotic, and this is very easy to see in contemporary life, in contemporary, almost hate to use the word culture, because culture implies a certain level of civility and civilization, but that also is lacking. And so the so-called culture is the culture of low-class men who are not trained and have no spiritual values and who are engaged in vikarma, which means forbidden activities. There's fruitive activities, karma or sukarma, good karma, that can be performed. Then there's ordinary work, and then there's kukarma or vikarma, which means forbidden activity. Now, what does Lord Rishabhdev say in the 5th canto? Nunam pramata kurute vikarma, yad indriya pritya apranoti, nasadumanya yata atmanoyam, asanapi kleshada asadeha. That those who are engaged in vikarma, forbidden activities, yad indriya pritya apranoti, because of the uncontrolled indriyas, senses, because they have no sense control, and they're simply pursuing the objects of the senses as if gratifying the senses with the objects were the not only prime goal of life, but the only thing. Like Vince Lombardi used to say, winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. Famous football coach. So that sense gratification isn't everything, it's the only thing. And that those who are pursuing that are nunam pramata. Pramata means mad, like mad, madly, insanely pursuing the pleasures of the senses as if that were the only thing. And we see this in the world around us. First of all, they have no spiritual master, and there's no culture to support civilized training and concepts of life. It's all empty of such things. Therefore, Lord Rishabhdev says, Nasadumanye yata atmanoyam. I don't think it very intelligent or befitting for an intelligent person, a cultured person, to live like this, because asana pikleshada asadeha. They will simply get repeated birth and death, body after body, by which they will suffer the kleshada, the miseries of material existence. So that doesn't sound like a very good course of activities, does it? Well, not to an intelligent person who is trained and cultured in the Vedic principles. No, that is like horrible. Oh, we cannot do that. We cannot live like that. We cannot madly pursue forbidden activities. People who, you even find people in traditional cultures, in different places in the world, they're very much alert and even fearful not to perform sinful activities because they know that there will be results, reactions to those activities, and they'll have to suffer. And so they're intelligent enough to know that we don't want to suffer unnecessarily. So why should we perform sinful activities? And so they're very much on alert, and just because they're pious, by their nature, by their inclination, oh, no, we don't do that. That is not allowed. We would never do that. That is forbidden. That is for sinful criminal people. But we are not like that. We don't do that. We are more concerned about our future than just wantonly trying to gratify our senses in this present moment. And, who cares? Forget about it. Man, life is only lived in the moment, and that's it. But you find pious people, and even like people living in rural cultures, not just in India, but in different places in the world, to propose to them sinful activities, like, for example, so many refugees from Vietnam came to this country after the war was over. And I have personal experience in dealing with these people because of going door to door for 35 years and meeting many very sweet and wonderful, pious Vietnamese people. And they are very alert. They do not want to perform any sinful activity. No, that is not allowed. We cannot do that. God will punish us, or Buddha will punish us. I told the story of the one Vietnamese man. He had a nice altar in his living room with Lord Buddha, and then they have, of course, all the ancestors, the parents, the grandparents. And every day they're making offerings of like mangoes and fruits and flowers and incense. And when they don't have any incense, you find in all their homes, you'll see, if you look in the front window, you see this little red glow. It's electric incense. It's a little incense stick with a red glowing tip, which is, it's just an electric thing, a little LED that's red. But the idea is there. So there's an offering.
Did it have a scent?
No. It's kind of for show. But the spirit is behind it. So I said to this gentleman who was perhaps in his mid-70s and had lived a rough life, during the war and had gotten out with his family. I said, "Oh, you have a very nice altar of Lord Buddha in your house." And he said, "I worship Lord Buddha every day of my life." So I appreciated that culture was there. He's worshiping Lord Buddha with the understanding that Buddha's God, and therefore I'm worshiping God, which is wonderful. And as it so happens, Lord Buddha is God. He's one of the Das Avatar. Keshavadrita Buddha Sharira Aya Jagadisha Hare. He's one of the Das Avatar, the 10 incarnations of the Supreme Lord, which Jayadev Goswami sings of in his Das Avatar Stotra. So those 10 incarnations are principal incarnations, important incarnations. And certainly Lord Buddha is very famous for practicing austerities and becoming enlightened and living a life according to a proper path of spiritual practices. You see that there. And in this connection, I saw they had the 90th birthday of the Dalai Lama, and so they had these different videos about the Dalai Lama on YouTube. So one of the videos, the Dalai Lama was speaking, and he was talking about how the Tibetan Buddhism was actually from India, there was one great sadhu in their tradition, and it was about, I think it was Nala, in about the 5th century AD, about 1500 years ago, who came to Tibet and taught the practice of Buddhism there to the Tibetans. And from that time since, they've had this tradition, this spiritual tradition, which they greatly revere, but which is being destroyed by the Chinese government, who are demons, who want to take over and despiritualize. There's that famous movie Kundun, where Mao Zedong says to the young Dalai Lama, who was about 20 years old at the time, he said, "Religion is like a poison. It is the poison of the people." And of course, that's very shocking for people who are spiritually inclined, to be told by a demon face to face that your worship is poison. Who was the propagator of poison? It was not the young Dalai Lama. And then, of course, he had to flee from Tibet and go to India. So he's living in India since whenever that was, the 1950s. And there they're continuing their monastic tradition and their practices, their sadhana, and their studying of Sanskrit and Pali scriptures. So he was saying how Nala brought these teachings, so it is Indian. And here we are living in India again, following Nala. And he said, everything about us is Indian. He said, we're living in India and we're eating rice, dal, and chapatis. He said that by name, rice, dal, and chapatis. So that's very nice. I'm sure he's getting nice chapatis every day. I wish we were getting nice chapatis every day here. Just like we read this morning about Srila Prabhupada. He could have had, his devotees would have given him whatever he wanted, prepared whatever he wanted. And he was just, rice, dal, chapati, sabji. That's all. Nothing elaborate or super fancy or highly sophisticated cuisine. Even though he had Italian and French disciples, the Italians are great cooks and the French are great cooks. The British, not so much. Right, Chandrika?
Yeah, that's so.
Everybody knows. Although India, Britain has been saved. The national food there is curry.
Yeah.
The fast food, like we have Kentucky Fried Chicken, there they have curry. And that's everybody is into that. So they're into Indian food too. So in this way, their spiritual culture is actually coming from Bharata Bhumi, from India. And he has obviously the greatest of respect and love for these teachings that have emanated from India and that have migrated to Lhasa. And now they have returned their headquarters there. They have a government in exile. Because India welcomed them as a respite from the, nefarious intentions of the Chinese government, which have remained to this day. And is a source of consternation for many people all over the world that their culture is being destroyed. And even now the children, the Tibetan children, they make them go to these Chinese schools and then they lose their ability to even speak the Tibetan language, but to speak of the culture. And the parents and the grandparents are lamenting that we can't even teach our children to speak, and they're becoming like Chinese. They're no longer Tibetan, and this source of great tribulation, because their traditional culture, they revere their spiritual master and they revere their spiritual tradition with the utmost of respect, and would rather die than commit grossly sinful activities, which are the hallmark or the trademark of the contaminated Western sense gratification culture that is spread all over the world and in which we live right in the midst of here, amazingly. But Prabhupada wants us here to preach Krishna consciousness to the people right where the people are. Not that we go, everybody goes and lives in Vrindavan and says, forget about it. Let the world go to hell. No, we have to make this spiritual knowledge, this enlightenment from Srimad Bhagavatam and the Vaishnava tradition available for everyone all over the world. So, Dhirodatta Acharya, who is a Vaishnava Acharya in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, and according to what I could find out, I was surprised, I did not know, he's a contemporary of Srila Prabhupada. He was born like a year after Prabhupada and lived until 1983. And here Prabhupada is quoting him because he's written a very famous commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam from the Vaishnava perspective. So when Srila Prabhupada was translating Srimad Bhagavatam and writing his purports, he had a book of commentaries, and they're of the acharyas, and they're like, I believe, 11 or 14 principal commentators on the Bhagavatam. And so he consulted these commentaries in Sanskrit, and then he wrote his own purports based on those commentaries of the previous acharyas. So he is following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. Particularly like, especially Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, 17th century great Vaishnava Acharya and commentator on Bhagavatam, Baladev Vijayabhushan, and others. The original commentator on the Bhagavatam is Sridhar Swami, who lived sometime in the 10th century, I believe. And he was in the Shankar Sampradaya. I mean, he's a Mayavadi, follower of Shankaracharya. And he was in charge of the Matta at Jagannath Puri. But his commentary on Bhagavatam clearly reveals him to be a Vaishnava and not a Mayavadi at all. It's like a sheep in wolf's clothing, you could say. He's an actual Vaishnava, although he's not only a Mayavadi sannyasi, but he's in charge of there are 4 like important monasteries in the Shankar Sampradaya that Shankaracharya established in India, and one of them in the Far East is Jagannath Puri. So this is astonishing to some that the Vaishnavas accept the commentary of Sridhar Swami, and Srila Prabhupada calls him the original commentator on Bhagavatam. Now we know from Chaitanya Charitamrita the story of Vallabhacharya, who established his own branch of Vaishnavism. He was there in Jagannath Puri with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he came to Lord Chaitanya, and said, I have written a commentary on Bhagavatam, and I want you to hear it. And this commentary is so good it has surpassed the commentary of Sridhar Swami. And Lord Chaitanya refused to hear it. No. He says, you cannot surpass Sridhar Swami. He is the original commentator on Bhagavatam, and he is the most important. And to think that you have surpassed him is just sheer pride and arrogance. So this caused a great rift on the part of Vallabha Acharya, who later founded his own mosques or temples in the Gujarat, and that their main temple is the temple of Srinathji, Nathdwar, which is right on the border of Gujarat and Rajasthan. And so there, that Srinathji deity that resides in that temple was the deity found by Madhavendra Puri in the jungle after having a dream. Krishna came to him in a dream and said, I've been in this jungle for many years because when the Mohammed soldiers came and were burning and pillaging, then the Pujari hid me in the jungle and then they fled. And since then I've been in here for many years. I'm very hot and burning, and I want you to bring the villagers to extract me from the jungle. And then he woke up from that dream. It's like, whoa. So he gathered the villagers and explained to him that Krishna is here in this jungle. And they brought spades and machetes and choppers, and they carved a path into the jungle there. And they dug up the spot where Madhavinda Puri showed them. And there they found the deity, the Gopal deity of Madhavinda Puri. Then Madhavinda Puri established that deity on top of Govardhan Hill. Later, that deity ended up in Natwar and is known now as Srinathji. But that is the Gopal deity of Sri Madhavinda Puri, one of the great acharyas and the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. And it was Madhavinda Puri is the Param Guru, or the grand spiritual master of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And his disciple, Sri Ishwara Puri, was the spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya. That's a very fascinating story. And apparently the only biographical information about the life of Madhavinda Puri is that account that's in Chaitanya Charitamrita that was related by Lord Nityananda, who also had a connection to Madhavinda Puri, to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu after Lord Chaitanya took sannyas. Yes, that's Srinathji. All the Gujaratis, they worship Srinathji. And their slogan is, Sri Krishna Sharanam Mama. I surrender unto you, Lord Krishna. That is their slogan, their mantra. And another, their slogan is Jai Shri Krishna. Just like we say Hare Krishna, they say Jai Shri Krishna. So they're very nice, the Vallabha Sampradaya. So anyway, this Sridhar Swami, the original commentator, and Jiva Goswami, in his Sandarbhas, where he has established quite philosophically and painstakingly the supremacy of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is one of the primary teachings of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He has very carefully accredited Sridhar Swami as the great commentator on Bhagavatam, even though he was a Mayavadi sannyasi. Well, who else was a Mayavadi sannyasi? Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas from Keshava Bharati in the Mayavadi Sampradaya. Well, why on earth did he do that? Why would he do that? Because there was no well-established system of Vaishnava sannyas at that time in North India. There's the Ramanuja Sampradaya in South India, which Viraragavacharya is a member of that Ramanuja Sampradaya. But also, at that time, Mayavadi sannyas was very prominent. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took the order of sannyas in the Mayavadi Sampradaya just to lend legitimacy to his sannyas and for preaching Krishna consciousness, which he did even to the Mayavadis. He converted the 10,000 Mayavadi sannyasis in Varanasi to bhakti through his explanations of the Atmarama verse. Of course, Lord Chaitanya was known as a great scholar, but he's more than just a great scholar. He's the unlimited, omnipotent Supreme Lord. So when he gives an explanation, no one can match his explanation. No one can defeat him. He exhibited those pastimes of scholarship in his youth, and he also converted those Mayavadi sannyasis, led by their leader, the very famous Prakashananda Saraswati. So that whole pastime of Lord Chaitanya in Varanasi, it's there in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Fascinating reading, and very wonderful to see how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dealt with him. When he entered the assembly of the Mayavadi sannyasis, he exhibited his Brahman effulgence. And all the sannyasis were like, whoa. He came in there glowing like 1,000 suns. And they couldn't believe it. And then he sat down where they washed their feet, like in the shoe room, in the corner of the shoe room, very humbly, not going and taking a seat with the head acharya there. And so Prakashananda got up from his seat, and he took Lord Chaitanya by the hand, and he led him, please don't sit in the unclean place where you know, sannyasis go barefoot, and then they wash their feet when they enter into a room, and in this case, an assembly room. And then Prakashananda said, I said, Your Holiness, you are so effulgent. You appear to be Narayan himself. And you know, the Mayavadi sannyasis, they're very puffed up, and they address each other as Narayan, because they think that they are God. You are God, I am God, we are God, I am you as you are he, and you are me, and we are all together. That's from I Am the Walrus by the Beatles. So they address each other, Om Namo Narayana. I am Narayan, you're Narayan. We're all Narayans. We're a bunch of Narayans running around here. But we're an illusion. Of course, Narayana, or the Supreme Lord, is never an illusion. The living entities who are not Narayan, they're an illusion. But when they saw Lord Chaitanya, they said, of all the Mayavadi sannyasis, you are really Narayan. Because look at that effulgence. A similar thing happened in the New York Ratha Yatra in 1976. Srila Prabhupada came to the New York Ratha Yatra, and the parade is going down Fifth Avenue in New York City, and the traffic's blocked off, and all the New York City cops are there. And one New York City policeman, he nudged one of the devotees and said, your leader, that man, he is glowing. And he was astonished. He saw Srila Prabhupada's effulgence, which not everyone could see. But Srila Prabhupada is naturally very effulgent, just like in the medieval European paintings of great saints and Christ, they paint in effulgence, right? Coming from that was accepted as part of the tradition of the artist to show the effulgence of either God or his expansions or saintly persons. So Srila Prabhupada is exhibiting this effulgence. Not everyone can see it, but this cop saw it, and he was just like thunderstruck. Look, that man is glowing. That is not possible. That is like defies the laws of physics, how a person can have this effulgence, this light emanating from them. Yet he was able to see that. Srila Prabhupada revealed that to him, and he could see him glowing. So Prakashananda said to Lord Chaitanya, I think, Your Holiness, you are Narayan himself. Well, actually, he is. He's Krishna himself, appearing in the form of a devotee, covered from the vision of ordinary people as if he were a great devotee. Everyone knew he was a great devotee, but they didn't know he was Krishna himself, appearing as a devotee in order to teach human society how to become a devotee, how to live as a devotee. And a very important cornerstone of his teaching is that Srimad Bhagavatam is the ultimate truth and the ultimate scripture, and that one should regularly hear and chant and worship the Srimad Bhagavatam. So that is a little bit about enlightenment and the light and the oneness. But the living entities are not one with God. They're simultaneously one and different. We emanate from God, so we are connected to God. We are the energy of God. But that does not make us God. God is still God. God is the source. Shakti Mam Purushar Shoyam, it says in the Brahma Samhita, that all the different Shaktis, the energies of God, like we hear in the Upanishads, Parasha Shaktir, Vididhaiva Shruyate, Swabhavaki, Jnana Bala Kriyacha. Those are Krishna's potencies as energies, power, strength, opulence, the creation, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. But he is Shaktiman. He's the possessor of those potencies, the source of those potencies, the origin. And we, the living entities, we are one of those potencies. Yes, I am the potency of God. That's true, you are. Your existence is as one of the energies of God. That is who you are, that is what you are. But you are not God. There's a difference between the possessor of the potency and the potency. So God is the source and he's the possessor. So this is the actual Vedic view and conclusion. And we find this in Bhagavad Gita. It is not some philosophy that's concocted by later devotees in the line of disciplic succession. It's right in Bhagavad Gita. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham teshva vashtitaha. That all this energy that you see, the whole cosmic manifestation, we don't really see the spiritual world because of the cloud of illusion is covering our vision. The spiritual world, it is not covered, but our vision is covered. We cannot see. But everything we see around us, maya tatamidam sarvam, jagadavyakta murtina, this whole cosmic manifestation, it is Krishna, it is coming from Krishna. So he's there, but simultaneously he's different from it. Matstani sarvabhutani, nachaham teshva vashtitaha. So that verse is the seed of the Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva philosophy. Simultaneous oneness and difference, but achintya, inconceivable. It is not possible to understand the simultaneous oneness and difference between God and his energies simply by mental speculation. As a matter of fact, a few verses earlier in this conversation between Narada and King Prachinibarhi, it is said that to be enlightened in this perfect knowledge of Krishna consciousness, one always has to engage himself in the practice of devotional service. And this is the actual key to enlightenment and to stepping up from the platform of ignorance, which we are currently in and the whole world is subjected to come to the platform of enlightenment, to attain perfect knowledge. Then one has to engage oneself in the devotional service of the Lord. That is a conclusive statement a few verses earlier. And that is the point made throughout the Bhagavatam and throughout all of Prabhupada's books. That is the point made in the Bhagavad Gita also. So if we would like to be uncovered from this curtain of ignorance that so woefully permeates everyone in the world and covers our hearts, and there allows the dirty things like lust, anger, greed, envy, anger, I mentioned that, madness, illusion, envy, all these things to reside in our hearts, we have to engage ourselves in the performance of devotional service. And then those things are cleansed from the heart. And when that covering of the heart is purified, it's like a washing, power washing. You get that power wash out, 7,500 pounds per square inch, and when you take that power washer and hit the driveway or the side of the building, all the scuzz and dirt that's there is washed away and it's left all gleaming and shiny and clean. So our hearts are filled with all this flotsam and jetsam, which is what? Our desire to enjoy this material world. But that is cleansed away. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu refers to in the first verse of the Shishashtakam. Chaito Darpana Marjanam. Marjana means cleaning. Cleaning the Chaita, the consciousness. Just like a mirror. When the mirror is covered with dust, you cannot see your reflection properly. But when you cleanse it, it's all nice and bright and shiny. Then you can see the reflection of the true self. And speaking in terms as an analogy. So when the dust of the mirror of the heart is cleansed, Chaito Darpanam Arjanam, Bhava Maha Devakni Nirapanam, the great blazing fire of material existence is extinguished. Just like we sing every morning. What's the first thing we sing? Samsara Dava Nalalita Loka Pranaya Karanya Ganaganatvam Praptasya Kalyana Gunarnavasya Vande Guru Sri Charanaram Vindam. That we worship the spiritual master because he's like a rain cloud. And what is raining down is Krishna's mercy. And that rain extinguishes the blazing fire. Bhava Devagni Nirapanam. Agni means fire. So this great blazing fire that's charring our existence, and we're suffering like an animal caught in a forest fire. That forest fire of samsara, of repeated birth and death, is extinguished by the rain cloud of mercy that pours down, the rain cloud of Krishna's mercy that pours down from the spiritual master. Therefore, Vande Guru Sri Charanara Vindam. I offer my most respectful and humble obeisances to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. So that is the process. One hears from the spiritual master. That means to study the books of Srila Prabhupada and understand this great philosophy and engage in devotional service, thus purifying the heart and removing those coverings, those layers of ignorance. Ignorance just means, I don't know. It's not that. Ignorance means I want to enjoy this material world. It's not just not knowing. It's knowing something else. The desire to enjoy separately from the Lord, which is our disease condition. We want to enjoy as if we were God. Yes, I am God. I can enjoy like God. God is the enjoyer, I am the enjoyer too. But the real enjoyment comes not from trying to elbow God out of the way and make ourselves the supreme enjoyer, but to engage in his service. That is the real happiness, the real enjoyment. When we engage in devotional service, then we are fulfilled because it is our natural position. Jivera Sarupoi, Krishnara Nityadas. The real swarup of the jiva is Krishnara Nityadas, to eternally engage in the devotional service of the Lord. And when we engage in that devotional service, then we become fulfilled and satisfied. And all the unnecessary attachments and accumulation of lust, anger, greed, and all those ignominious things that plague us, they become washed away. And then we return to our true state of Ananda Maya Bhyasat. Satchit Ananda. Eternal, full of knowledge, and Ananda, very blissful, blissfully engaged in the Lord's service. So King Prachinabarhi, taking these instructions from Narada Muni, he went to Gangasagara, which is a confluence of the Ganga and the Bay of Bengal. So Ganga, the Ganga River, Sagara, the ocean. So Gangasagara, they come together. It's a holy place at which Lord Kapila resides to this day, although not visible to everyone or anyone, engaged in performing austerities. And there's a great festival there every year on the Makara Sankranti. And there's an ISKCON center there in Gangasagara. They have a web page. I looked it up. And one thing they do there is, huge crowds of people come on that holy day, that astrologically auspicious day, and then the devotees distribute prasadam to the masses there at Gangasagara, which is not that far from Mayapur, our big temple in Mayapur. So the two are related. So a bunch of devotees from Mayapur go there, and they all engage in this great prasadam distribution effort at the Gangasagara festival every year, annually. All right, so we'll stop there. Questions, comments, realizations? From the vast audience
It's,
of 3? Well, depending on who's ever online. I guess they can't email in questions, can they?
okay. One question.
Yes.
So those sannyasis that said you actually look like Narayan. I mean, doesn't that imply that they understand that they're not Narayan?
Well, they think they're Narayan, but he was really Narayan. I mean, we're thinking Narayan until we saw you.
Yeah.
And we don't have that effulgence. Where'd you get that effulgence? You must be Narayan.
Yeah.
It's kind of almost humorous pastime. They're all going around thinking they're Narayan, and then they see the effulgence of Lord Chaitanya go, oh, this is the real Narayan here. Look at him. We can't do that.
Yeah. And then the other question I had was just, there's so many, people come here and they hear what we have to offer, and then maybe they stay for some time, but then a lot of times they end up, leaving, and then they start following, like other organizations that just, they're not as strict, and they're not making any changes in their life, and I don't know what
Because
to
that is
say.
a lot easier.
Well, yeah, and I don't know what
They come here and we say, Sarva Dharma Parityajya, just surrender everything and serve Krishna.
Yeah.
And they go, okay, let me check out this other place where there's none of this surrender stuff, and there's no follow these principles, and there's, it's like, just do whatever you want. Okay, that's a lot better. I like that better.
Yeah.
because they don't understand the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita.
Of course it's
And no one else is teaching it.
Yeah.
Either.
Yeah, of course that's why they do that, because they want to still enjoy. But I mean, like, what can I say to these people? Like, you can try to say, well, what are the results of this? Have you done anything? Have you?
Yes, but people are not very much inclined towards philosophical understanding.
Yeah.
Neither they're trained to understand philosophy, and neither can they be convinced philosophically, pretty much. But prasadam, Prabhupada's books, kirtan, association, that can change the heart of someone.
Mm-hmm.
But if they come to the restaurant counter and you tell them you have to surrender, this may not work. Mm-hmm. Prabhupada also said, what your 3-minute speech will do, give them a book. Mm-hmm. If they read Bhagavad Gita, then, there are many people that became devotees by reading Prabhupada's books. I'm one of them. Mm-hmm. Now, some people can be convinced by a good argument. Mm-hmm. But they have to read, and then gradually take prasadam, go to kirtan, then good things can happen. Of course, they may come to the point where you realize, this surrender, that's not for me. No, thanks, man. I'm more interested in enjoying my senses, to tell you the truth. I was like, you guys are great. I love your food, but hey. So, what can you do? We just keep on preaching, distributing prasadam, having kirtan. We just keep on doing what we're doing, and some sincere soul may pop up out of the flow of the material energy, and that's wonderful. And many they come for a little while, and then boom, they're gone back into the river of sense gratification, being carried away by the waves. Well, we can't stop that. If they take to Krishna consciousness through good intelligence and good association, then they can. Otherwise, there's no possibility. So don't be attached. Don't be disappointed. What is that? Many are called, few are chosen. Devotees just manifest out of the clear blue from time to time. It happened to you. It happened to you. It happened to me. It happened to you. We were caught up in the river of sense gratification with no hope of escaping. And somehow or other Krishna rescued us through the mercy of the devotees and the teachings of Prabhupada's books and the power of prasadam and the power of the holy name. Well, all right then. What are you going to do? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. You can give a man Bhagavad Gita, but you can't make him think. All right, so we have to stop. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
So